Well, you're really celebrating Memorial Day today, honey.
Me, but this fucking thing was depressing today.
Yeah, you're like Ahmed from the Covenant.
Shit.
Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the Lunch Table Podcast with Dylan and Akram. For today's episode, we are reviewing the last episode of Barry Season 4. I was so sad to be departing with this series, but Akram, let's start off with your thoughts.
Wow, what a miserable day. And so we just got finished, we got done finishing Succession, and boy, oh boy, was that depressing. This is depressing, kind of. Like, I'd say 5 out of 10. So full spoilers ahead, everybody. Yeah, so Barry dies. Barry gets shot in the head by Gene Cousineau at the very end. So that's jumping way ahead, right? But it's this whole thing, it's this whole preparation where we think that Barry's actually going to wipe out everybody, Hank's team and also Fuches' team. But it ends up not being the case. It ends up being Fuches wiping out Hank's team. Well, his own team got wiped out too. So it's almost like a fresh start in a way. It's like weird. So Sally, fortunately enough, and John are unscathed by the whole matter. And Barry, I thought that was really funny, that scene too, when Barry went back and he's like, guns. And he was like loaded up.
Walmart.
Yeah, he just like walked out like that. It looks like like a Suicide Squad
like
cosplayer.
An NRA commercial or something.
And yeah, this is the dream. But yeah, I mean, so I really was hoping like to see Barry just wipe everybody out in like a very John Wick type of manner. But I think this was like a more, I wouldn't say poetic, but it was nice how they left it off, because Barry is met by Fuches after all these years, and Fuches has John, and he lets John run to Barry, and they both give like a look to each other. I remember there's a movie called, I think, The Secret Life of Walter Mitty or something like that. Yeah, with I was going to say Ben Shapiro, with Ben Stiller. And there was a scene where they were, the main photographer was taking a picture of this like really rare mountain lion, and he says like beautiful things don't need like a picture or something like that. And that reminded me of that. It was like, this was such a beautiful moment. We could drop everything, because at the end of the day, I am sort of like a father figure to you, and I am astonished that you created this innocent being, that I could sense it, that he is innocent. And Fuches was beat up to hell at the jail, and so now he has like this new understanding where he recognizes real. And so that moment, I think, was really pure. Let me get your thoughts on the beginning half of Barry.
Yeah, it was it was a great episode in my opinion. It was really like heavy on the topic of like redemption and forgiveness in a way. First of all, I love the opening scene where like they all like did close-ups of like each of the main like characters, like faces, like Fuches and then Hank and then Barry, because it's like it sets you up for this big kind of like shootout confrontation. And Sally in this episode, I think, is really noteworthy, right? Because she talks about accountability for Barry, like why don't you turn yourself in, like, you know, if you really feel that you're redeemed, you would, you know, go over to the police and turn yourself in. And I thought it was, you know, noteworthy coming from her, because she just before that, she confessed to John that she was a terrible mother. And I love that scene where like John like rushed in and like hugged her. I thought that was a great, beautiful, you know, scene. It was so like heartwarming and intimate. And Hank also kind of in a way found, not maybe redemption, but like he was kind of like apologetic in a way, because I thought it was poetic that like Fuches like shot him and then he kind of died at the feet of the Cristobal statue, and then he was looking up, and it was kind of like in a way he's like saying like, I'm sorry, you know, for what I've done, because all this really happened because, you know, he betrayed Cristobal. So everything was poetic, right? And like you said, like with Fuches, it was like a fresh start, and you know, he saw, you know, John. And it was kind of like seeing Barry again for the first time. It was like the innocence right before all this, you know, chaotic mess happened. And Gene, like, I guess is the only exception this episode, because he just went full. I don't want to say it because I'll get canceled on on YouTube. But like, he just went off. Yeah. What do you think of like Kusano in this episode?
This guy. Well, okay. I didn't like. I think with this type of ending, you have to take an omnipresent view, right? So you see that Barry was a huge detriment to Jean's life, and a lot of things happen, and now Jean was the center man for like going to jail, and it was publicized and stuff. So Jean felt very depressed, and I from the previous season, I felt like, oh, Jean's gonna off himself, and so Jean was getting prepared all this time to kill Barry because Barry was like Terminator. And Jean was like Sarah Connor, if you will. And we finally see that Jean, I felt like he knew the consequences of what he was going to do. So Barry's in Jean's house, and Jean, it looked like he was off himself, but when he heard Barry's voice, I was like, now I know what I have to do. It's been leading up to this. So he shoots Barry in the chest, and then Barry's like, oh, and then he shoots Barry in the head. It was very ugly, like, to see, because it's a character that, you know, no matter what, it's weird how you have to kind of sympathize with Barry, but that's how good the writing is. And so to see that character just go in an instant was, in a way, kind of putting him out of his misery too, because there's only so, like, you can't run for the rest of your life. It's a fiction. It's not going to work out for your family. And at the end of the day, you did do bad things. And even if you thought you were the hero, you were misled. And so Fuches shooting him real fast 2 times. One was to enjoy it in the chest, and the second one was like to put you out of your misery. That's it. It's done with. And I'm going to stay here. I'm old. My son turned against me. Everyone thinks that I'm a murderer. My legacy is done, and I had no life. You know, he recognized like what's the reality. So he was like, okay, well, I'm fine with that.
I think it's still worth mentioning. His last act was that he actually was going to turn himself in.
Barry, yeah.
He says to the guy, like, you should call the police. Like, I think that actually what made the gunshot more impactful, right? Because, you know, he was going to finally like come to terms with everything he did, and like he realized Sally was right, and then that's when like it all went to shit, and it was like, oh well, now he won't get the redemption that he wanted to, right? It's kind of like almost like making him a martyr in a way. And then we see, of course, like they made the movie about him, which his son watches, that, you know, his friend showed him, and it was kind of like an over the top kind of exaggeration, as like Hollywood does, but it has a shred of truth to it in a way, if you think about it.
Yeah, for sure. And also it's like a bittersweet type of ending too, because we all thought that in the beginning, at least, it was like Barry's a serial killer, and now it's like, no, Barry's actually a hero that tried to stand up to a British Gene Cousineau. That was so funny.
I'm like, so mad they didn't get Mark Wahlberg to play Barry.
I was expecting that.
Come on, Marky Mark.
I really was expecting. I was like, oh man, I'm so mad because the British guy, when Barry walks in, he was like, "There's a body here. I need to bury it." It was so funny. It was just like a matter of fact. Yeah, I mean that jumped ahead. So this season, of course, jumped ahead in time, and then again, it did it again. So at least it seems like Sally, in a way, kind of took place of Jean. It was like she's older, it appears, and she's teaching not in an actual acting school, but in a high school, I think. And it's kind of a downgrade, but I think now she could like live a life in peace. I just don't understand why she doesn't want John to see the movie. Maybe because she knows it's a fiction, and it's really meta too. Isn't that crazy how like they're all like, this started in an acting school and then it ended with this legacy through this movie. That's a shit movie, but it still ended in that note. It's really meta.
I mean, maybe she was kind of like protecting also like his understanding, right? Because she did say like he wasn't a soldier, he was a murderer, and maybe she didn't want John to kind of like idolize her dad, right? Because it is kind of fucked up, like all the shit he did. But in a way, like when you grow up, you kind of develop your own opinion on people, right? And you have to have like certain viewpoints. And even though the movie is kind of like an exaggeration of like the events that happen, like I said, it's still kind of encapsulates the idea of Barry. Like at the end of the day, he still kind of was like a loving father in a way. So maybe that's why he, chose to watch it anyway, knowing all the events that happened because he was there.
Right.
He still kind of chose for himself to envision his father in this kind of, model heroic perspective, if you will.
And it also comes back to, I think, again, like image, like seeing your father as a hero, but then the last moment that they spent with each other was in the bed. Yeah, I just forgot about that. It was in the bed. But I like to think that the last moment was actually what stood out to me the most was, again, the stare off with Fuches, and it was very primal. I felt like this episode was big in ideas. It was just really subtle about it. It was like how humans are very, to its core, it's very primal. It's like two wolves looking at each other, and there's like a little pup there, and they're like looking at each other, and then they leave, right? They just scurry off. And then you have your tribe in the bed, and you have to worry about tomorrow. And then at the end, it was all about legacy. And so it kind of like, in a way, it kind of summed up everything. And then again, through the whole show, it was like, everyone's trying to change who they actually are, but they can't really escape it. So I felt like, again, in the omnipresent view, it's like, whoa, they dealt with heavy topics, and they did it in the most subtlest ways, and also in a funny way too. Oh, mourning your loved one and making mistakes too, like Hank. All of it was beautiful, to be honest. I wouldn't say that I rather that Barry didn't die. I'm sure that they would live a miserable life, Sari and Barry together still, if he was alive. But I'm just sad. But maybe it's for the best. But that also questions your morality too. That's interesting too, because you think, well, maybe it's best that he dies, right? Because it's kind of like saying the quiet part out loud. Oh yeah, maybe that's good. So it's I think it's a really diverse like episode, like really complex. If you break it down, atomize it, you'll see.
Yeah, for sure. I think it kind of memorializes Barry in a way. I mean, throughout this season, I feel like he was kind of just like in the background as much, even though it's his show, which was kind of weird, which we'll talk more about later. But I think killing your main protagonist in a way always feels like kind of like ballsy to me. It's kind of like we were talking earlier, like how like in The Departed they kill like Leonardo DiCaprio's character.
Yeah.
Like it kind of martyrs him and makes him more important knowing that he died, because it makes his sacrifice and all his efforts, to change things in a way more powerful, if that makes sense.
Oh no, absolutely, yeah. And it also leaves a kind of like seeing it for the first time also leaves like a kind of ick too. But it's like it's weird. It's like you don't want it to happen. You didn't expect it to happen, exactly like the Lito thing. But then after, you're like, oh, but that's nice that at least he's not a serial killer. But really, who got screwed over though still so funny to me. I don't know why. Gene. I feel so bad for Gene. Because when he sat down like with a blank stare like this, he's like, you know where he's gonna end up? He's gonna end up where Michael Myers in the Halloween reboot was, like in that like weird place. So he's gonna be like this.
Smith's Grove, just like with a straight jacket, just like
because that guy went through the ringer. But hey, he had enough. Enough is enough.
He's got the worst luck. He's gonna be like in the casino with like Eddie and Shirley from Hello Tomorrow, just like in the gambling.
Well, at least he got to use the gun too, because that has shown up a lot of times throughout the series, and so it's the first time finally. Because I think in season 3, he was going to kill Barry and Kusanow's office. He was going to do it, but he fumbled the bag. So this time he was planning it for a long time. Yeah, I'd say it's not a dark episode, but I just think it's a very, I don't know how to explain it. It's like, it's weird. It's a fucked up episode now.
It's surreal in a way.
It's a surreal, yeah, exactly. Yeah. There you go. Yeah.
Like you watch it and then, you kind of take in everything, and then you kind of like absorb it, and then you're like, okay, like you kind of slowly understand it, and you realize that it's more than just like a quick 20-minute act, right? It's supposed to embody a lot of ideas and details about like humanity and redemption. I think that's a beautiful thing that this series does, even though I haven't really watched it. just from this episode and this season, I can kind of like pick up things that this show talks about.
Yeah, and in 35 minutes too, like to do all of that. I mean, no wonder it has a high Rotten Tomato score. Okay, what would you rate this episode?
Ooh, this actually gets a high rating for me. I'd probably give it a 9 out of 10. I really enjoyed it. You know, even though it was kind of quick, you know, it had a lot of cool moments between characters and a lot of, you know, redemption arcs, and I thought that was really sweet. And even though it killed off its main lead, it did it in a way that made it feel like it was important to the story, as opposed to just like killing him off just for the sake of killing him off, right? Because it did lead to like his son kind of learning from his experiences, right? So 9 out of 10 for me. How about you?
Yeah, it's it kind of, again, it's a very I'd say a brutally honest ending, and I think it really worked well with the rest of the series. I mean, you guys could let us know in the comments below, what did you think of it, and compared to like each season, was it like a fair type of ending? I really dug this episode, but I am sad too, of course. But I think that's what makes it even more impactful, is that you care for this character that is in the morally gray as well. So it gets you questioning things. And I think that's always important. I think that's a dialogue that everyone should have. So yeah, I would probably give this episode a 9 out of 10 as well. If any other day, like if I didn't care about the show too much, I'd probably give it like a 10 out of 10. But because I like feel a little butthurt, but also I get the big ideas. That's why I'm kind of like in the middle, and I'm giving it like a 9 out of 10. So that's my rating, and that is our review for Barry, episode 8, season 4, now streaming on Max. What a stupid name change, huh? But yeah, that's our final episode. But we will have a season 4 review coming for you guys pretty soon. So thank you so much also for sticking around through the rest of the Barry reviews that we did. It's one of our most successful review series thus far, along with Succession. So we appreciate the new family members in our channel. Thank you so much. Dylan, please take us away.
Yeah, guys, if you have any shows you'd like us to review, please drop a comment or leave a like. Let us know. We have a bunch of content we have planned, but we love to hear from you. You know, give us feedback on how you think we're doing as a podcast. Yeah, these were really fun to review, and of course, you know, we just wrapped up Succession, so we're really depressed right now.
Yeah, I know.
We just wrapped up 2 of our favorite shows, and you know, it's gonna be a while before The Last of Us comes back. So Akram is going through a dry spell right now.
I was so sad. Why does HBO Max do this to me?
Oh God. But yeah, thank you guys for all your support. Check out all our content, check out our playlist. We do plenty of reviews. We just did a PlayStation Showcase discussion. That was really fun to talk about.
Yeah.
And so much more. So yeah, thank you guys so much. And until then, thanks for having lunch with us.
See you guys.